Hello. It's Friday afternoon, January 29th. It's 1 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. I'm Alison Pitt, and welcome to Daily Star Trek Views, the sort of weekly non-scripted version of Daily Star Trek news where we talk about, whatever. So welcome. Thank you for joining me. I want to give a special shout out to Zach, who is very excited to make it this week. Hi, I'm glad to see you here. So I'm like really, really unprepared for today. I know I say that every week, but I have a really good reason and it's for a good cause. But I would tell you about that at the end of the show. So stay tuned. And I also wanted to say I have promised to talk about Lower Decks too. That will come sort of in the latter half. But I have as is usual on a day when I feel totally unprepared, like I have nothing to talk about, I end up writing 4,000 notes of things that I have to remember not to forget to talk about. So I'm gonna go through a couple of those first, and then we're gonna start talking about Lower Decks, which I'm very excited for. We There you go, BC, just for you. It is actually a full moon here, or it was last night, which is really sad because it's raining really hard. Anyway, yes, so I was not doing the live show when Lower Decks was on, or I think I started it right at the end, maybe. And so I never talked about Lower Decks. And now it's just landed in the UK and Europe last week, I believe. And so, there's a whole new crop of people that are just seeing Lower Decks now. So I know you guys who are watching it from overseas have it's all dropped at once, so you probably all binged it already, but we're going to go one by one because spoiler alert, I really like Lower Decks and I think it's a very good Star Trek show and there's things to talk about. So we'll do it that way. Before we do that, however, a little bit of it was a hangover from last time. I don't know if you remember, but last week I was wearing a black shirt with a bunch of sort of metallic starships on it, and it was gold and it was silver. You couldn't see the whole thing, but if you could, it was the next gen comm badge logo, all made up of starships. And that was a Star Trek Online t-shirt that was from STLV a couple of years ago, 2017, 2018, I can't remember. The reason that I wore it last week was to say congratulations to Thomas the Cat, Thomas Maroney, who's their lead ship and UI designer, and also just the team at Cryptic, because I don't know exactly who the credit goes to. But there's a Star Trek Online ship as part of this year's Ships of the Line calendar, which is a pretty awesome thing. I can't remember which one it is. I want to say it's the Enterprise F, maybe the Odyssey class. Somebody correct me on that. But it's very exciting. I have talked in the past about how much I love Star Trek Online. They are like a legit branch of Star Trek, if that makes sense. They do really great storytelling, and the quality of artwork that they do and design that they do is like top notch. It's up there with any of the design work that they do on any Star Trek series. So congratulations to the team there. Go play Star Trek Online. They've got a new update out. They're celebrating their 11th anniversary this week. It's a big deal. They've got Mary Chieffo, Sam Witwer's come over from Clone Wars. It's they're I cannot speak highly enough of the team at Star Trek Online. They do a really great job. Anyway, so that was from last week. The other little thing that I wanted to let you guys know about is I actually got a thing today. You can actually get 50% off of a full year's CBS All Access subscription for a limited time with the promotional code Paramount Plus with PLUS all spelled out. That is to sort of get people going ahead of the relaunch of Paramount Plus that's happening March 4th. Mark your calendars. So that is a really, really good deal. And the way that it works is if you sign up for a CBS All Access annual membership now, you'll get 50% off that first year. And then it automatically rolls over into Paramount Plus when that happens. So I'll put a link down below that you can use that once I'm done with the show, but that's a really good deal, especially because if you are thinking about getting it once it switches over to Paramount Plus, like you can actually get it now and it's like getting a few months free. It's like getting 6 months free. So it's a very good deal. So I'll put a link down below when we get there. that brings me to the other thing that I wanted to talk about Paramount Plus because, the content that I've been talking about with Paramount Plus is still getting a lot of traffic on YouTube in particular, and, I'm not really sure why because maybe it's because 'cause I'm too, like, inside of it. I've been knowing this is coming for a really long time, so and I don't see it as being a huge change, so for me, it seems kind of like a non-event, but maybe I'm wrong. Um, I just wanted to point out 2 kind of interesting things. Number 1, so I don't know if you've seen the spots, and if you haven't, go to Paramount Plus on YouTube. The CBS All Access YouTube page is not there anymore, it's now Paramount Plus. Um, they have the first 2 spots, maybe they've got a new one up now, that is, climbing Paramount Mountain. And it's really cheesy, and it's narrated by Patrick Stewart, and it's a lot of fun, and it's got, like, Dora the Explorer and Paw Patrol and the guy from Survivor and Snooki and Spock and Pike, and, like, it's cheesy, it's like this ragtag group of people climbing Paramount Mountain. And I read an article earlier this week, in a big magazine, so it's a legit one, I don't know who it was, that has indicated that that campaign is actually going to culminate on February 7th in the Super Bowl, which of course you can watch on CBS All Access. So they've got kind of like a whole holistic multi-channel thing happening there, which is quite cool. And it's a good incentive if you have CBS All Access to go and watch the Super Bowl, just because apparently the ending is going to be very, very good. Um, Interesting thing that didn't quite make it into the show this week, but I think is really interesting is that despite, the state of the economy, and even the state of football and the state of all of that, CBS or Viacom CBS have sold out all of their Super Bowl spots. So that's a pretty big accomplishment. I don't want to say they got lucky this year, but the timing is fortuitous that they will be having the Super Bowl on CBS All Access right before, less than a month before that all changes over to Paramount Plus. Good for them. I think the timing works really well. The other thing that I saw in the news, which was turned out I was screaming at my computer and then turned out I was wrong. It happens occasionally. So I saw this article about how Top Gun Maverick, the new Top Gun reboot, whatever, that I want to say like Netflix and maybe like Disney Plus or one of the big ones had wanted to purchase Top Gun Maverick for to be released this year, but on streaming video on demand. And knowing that it really wasn't going to do much in the theater. And of course, this article, which I don't even remember where it was from, was claiming that like, oh, Viacom CBS isn't budging. And I was screaming at my computer because nowhere in this entire article did it mention the fact that Paramount Plus is coming out. And of course, we all know what Warner Media have done with HBO Max, where they're simultaneously releasing in theaters and on HBO Max. And I thought, why on earth would Paramount give that property to anyone else when they're launching their new big, huge thing? One of the Viacom CBS executives has since come out and actually said it's still going to premiere in theaters, and they're not going to pull it onto Paramount Plus. But where do you think it's going to go after the theaters? Is all I'm saying. So that's it. That's kind of the news-based stuff. Last week, I started doing a little Star Trek show and tell. So I actually have a really big show and tell to give you today. And I'm curious if any of you guys have actually got the same thing. So let me show it to you. It is a giant, like, water bottle from, oh, there we go, Star Trek Beyond. So that was 2016 for the 50th, when that came out in July. And I have great memories of that. I can't exactly remember why, but I was running late. Oh, it was traffic. I was dragging me and the kids, driving up the A419 in Swindon in Wiltshire, trying to get to the one cinema that had it in like 3D. And we got stuck in traffic. My kids got to hear me swear a lot. And at the beginning of Beyond, he has that thing where he's talking to the little tiny, like, well, you find out that the aliens are little tiny. I missed that whole scene because we were late, but we did get these. Um, I got 2 or 3, I can't remember. I might have gotten 2. One of them now lives with, I believe, Chris Keen, who was a big fan of Priority One, and I haven't spoken to in ages. So, Chris Keen, if you're watching that, I hope you still have that. But anyway, that's my show and tell. BC in the chat says, "Hey, I have a Star Trek 2009 Burger King cup sitting here. Excellent. I'm a sucker for these. We actually have some downstairs that are, God, what was it from? Oh, X-Men. It was an X-Men one. We weren't even going to see X-Men, but they had them for sale, so we went. I really like the X-Men, but we weren't seeing it that day. So anyway, please forgive me. My throat's a bit funny today. Okay. We've done news stuff. We have done show and tell. And there's just one last thing that I want to tell you before I start getting into Lower Decks. I don't know if any of you listened to today's show, but I talked about Matthew Corey's new book, and it's coming out on Sunday. Matthew Corey listens to the show. I don't know if he sometimes comes in chat, I think. Matthew Corey holds the distinction of being the youngest ever person to have earned a writing credit on Star Trek. He was 17 years old when his spec script that went through the open submission policy got accepted and transformed into a Star Trek: The Next Generation episode. It's one of those like pieces of trivia that a lot of fans know and love. He's got a book that is talking all about that experience, and it also includes the original spec script that he sent in, which is actually really different. I read it; it's very different from the script that came out of it, which is probably why his credit is based on a story by Matthew Corey rather than like a written by. But it's completely fascinating to read. It's completely fascinating to read how he developed those characters and the bits of his life that kind of influenced what that script ended up being. Yeah, True Q. Zach in the chat has asked True Q, right? Yes, it's True Q. That's why this week's chat was all True Q, because it was all kind of synergistically something. Anyway, it's the book costs $2.99. You can pre-order it today, and it'll come out on Sunday. And just basically everyone should go read it because it's just go read it. I said it in the show earlier today, and I want to give him support for that. So go read it. I'll leave a link down below after this is done too. Okay, so listen. Okay, before Chris is in the chat, so say hi to Chris. Richard Blight, I don't recognize your name. But he seems like a person who's familiar with Swindon traffic. I lived in Swindon for 7 years. I was fortunate that I lived close to work, so I never really had to deal with Swindon traffic, but occasionally when I got caught in it, it was a nightmare. Swindon, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is the home of the Magic Roundabout. Go and look that up on Wikipedia. It is a giant roundabout consisting of one big roundabout bordered by 5 contra-rotating mini roundabouts. And the way you drive across it is that you just drive really, really slow and hope nobody runs into you, because that's what everybody else is doing. And eventually you'll get there is how the Magic Roundabout works. Anyways, okay, so Lower Decks. Spoiler alert, I love Lower Decks. Having seen the whole series, I just think it's wonderful. And I think Mike McMahon himself has said, it's a love letter to Star Trek. And it's love it or hate it, Star Trek: The Next Generation is still the iconic Star Trek for the vast majority of people who would consider themselves Star Trek fans. It was by far the most popular series of Star Trek that was produced. And Lower Decks is kind of like continuing that, but like humorous. So I will warn you that anything I say about Lower Decks is colored by the fact that I just absolutely love the entire series. So, Part of the reason I love it is because it's actually, set up in terms of production very similar to old classic Star Trek. So, this episode, Second Contact, we get introduced to the concept of second contact, which is what the USS Cerritos does. Um, and then it kind of has some unintended consequences, right? But what we see is there's an A plot and a B plot. Um, Not an awful lot of a story arc, although a little bit with Mariner and her mother. Um, I'll come on to that in just a second. But yeah, so A plot is down on the planet. B plot is the zombie infestation, which is hilarious. And this is an ensemble show. Ostensibly, you could argue that the lead characters are Boimler and Mariner, but I think they really split the screen time up between all four of the lower deckers, including Rutherford and Tendi, and I like that. My I don't know how to express it. My view of Star Trek has always been a really a paradigm of how to effectively work as a team. It's a celebration of diversity, right? And I don't mean diversity like with a capital D, but including underrepresented minorities, although that is important and is very key to Star Trek. I mean diversity of personality, opinion, ability, and that's something that Star Trek, The Next Generation in particular, but the whole franchise does really well, is shows you a realistic view of a team with a diverse group of members who come together and use their unique abilities and support each other and then come out with a really good result. And Lower Decks is doing that. They will do that a little bit more. I can't remember which episode it is. But I will definitely talk about that concept more because I think Lower Decks does it really well. Um, Something that I noticed really that is good about the writing, and sometimes writing can get lost in a cartoon because it's so like flash bang in your face. They did a really nice bit at the end where we're supposed to be like on the inside, like we know. Well, we don't find out until the very end that Mariner is the captain's daughter, right? But she never comes out and says that Mariner's my daughter. The way that you discover it is through being a fly on the wall while she's talking to her husband, the admiral, about their daughter. And I thought that was a really, really nice bit of writing and is actually something that they do a lot in this series. They show, don't tell. Um, it was something that I criticized all the time in Discovery season 1, where they just basically stood around telling you what the plot was instead of showing it to you. That's completely the opposite in Lower Decks, and I think that elevates it from a cartoon into a legitimate Star Trek series. So well done. Um, I've lost my train of thought. Um, oh, I know what it was. So this live stream, when I sort of put a notice on Twitter earlier today, I titled it, um, "Can you be a brat in Starfleet? Like, can you be a brat and succeed in Starfleet?" Because Mariner is a brat, Boimler is a brat. I mean, I think Rutherford and Tendi are actually more closer to what we would consider to be the normal paradigm of a young Starfleet officer, somebody who is relatively green. Sorry, I just came up with that right now and I made myself giggle. Um, but they're more like I'm genuinely embarrassed. They're more like the paradigm that you would expect to see of a young Starfleet recruit. And Boimler and Mariner, on the other hand, like Boimler's like way over the top, right? And Mariner is like, I hate all this stuff. It's all dumb. And so this episode, as it's establishing that, it kind of it brings up a really, really interesting question, which and honestly I still ponder. Can you still be in Star Trek and in Starfleet and be super sarcastic? Can you be rude to people? Can you be abrasive and difficult? And I mean, the way this show is written, then yes, you absolutely can, because they write it as, yes, you can be like that and also do these great things. I mean, right off the bat, they give you a great example with Mariner helping out these farmers, right? And she's abrasive the whole time. She doesn't let anybody in on what she's doing, but she's doing good. She's doing Starfleet work. Um, it kind of goes back to there's a thing that I always talk about, which is like the distinction between character and personality. And there are two terms that people get confused a lot, but they're actually two completely different things. It's the same as like being nice but not kind, or kind but not nice. Your personality is what comes out, in your day to day, the way that you act, the tone of voice, like the words that you use. This is your personality. Are you nice to people on the street? Do you wave hello? Do you hug people? That's your personality, right? And Boimler and Mariner both are kind of brats in their personality. But your character, which is what dictates your values, it dictates the choices that you make, and it also dictates how you respect people and how you treat people, especially the people that are of a lower station than you. That's your character. And I think both of those characters, total brats, kind of obnoxious personalities, but both have really great characters. And I think that's what ties them together and why, overall they're friends, because they have similar characters that actually value the same things. So, yes, I think you can be a brat and still be in Starfleet. I think you're going to possibly rub a few people the wrong way. But it was like I was saying before about how this diversity in a team. There is actually probably a ship out there, and maybe it's the Cerritos and maybe it's something else. There is probably a ship out there that is run by like a huge group of sarcastic mofos. Like they just rib on each other and they make fun of each other and they just are awful. Like, it's joking and crass. And there's probably a whole ship that is run by those people. And it's probably one of the best ships in the fleet because, you can have that personality has a role in a diverse team. So, I don't know, it's something interesting to think about. That is one criticism that I commonly lob at Star Trek: The Next Generation, is that it was too, I mean, everybody there was different, but they were all kind of different versions of the same paradigm. And the most extreme was probably like Ensign Rowe, maybe, or Worf, where they were pretty gruff all the time. But for the most part, they were all kind of the same, excuse me, the same personalities. So, yeah, I like the fact that in Lower Decks, we are examining people of a different personality, of a different type. That's hugely, hugely valuable to me. And the age old question, is it Star Trek? I absolutely think it is. I think it's one of the I personally think it's the best Star Trek series of the modern era. And I am very much looking forward to seeing them go many, many seasons because it's good. Right. So I'm going to have a quick look through the chat and then I will spend a couple minutes wrapping up. Thank you for listening to my little rant about personality. So yeah, I'm going backwards in the chat because I can't, it's confusing. Zach says, I think they become less bratty over time, which I do seem to recall that. And Paul says, I think it's probably the most realistic depiction of the military, even as an exaggeration. So now, BC, you've raised an interesting point. He says, I'd like to see the producers deflect their most absurd ideas into Lower Decks and keep them out of live action dramatic Trek. That's an interesting idea. I hadn't considered Lower Decks as an outlet for that. Was really expecting them to do that more with short treks, but that really hasn't come to fruition. Short treks seems to be like teaser episodes because they keep working them in. I was really hoping they'd be standalone. But that's a really interesting idea. They can do those sorts of things on Lower Decks that they might not be able to do or might not want to do in short treks or other things. BC also says Lower Decks is like a built-in Galaxy Quest style parody, which is funny because, I'd kind of forgotten the music, and the opening music to me was a perfect blend of Star Trek and the Orville and, Galaxy Quest, not Galaxy Quest the movie, but Galaxy Quest the TV show inside of the movie. So, yeah. Zach weighs in, says, "I usually like roundabouts." Roundabouts are amazing, and it is, continually upsetting to me that Americans don't kind of grok the idea of a roundabout. Um, very, very quickly, because I obviously had to take my driving test in England, which is much harder, by the way, than it is in America. They will penalize you if you don't go fast enough. And, if you've ever driven in England, there are roads, so if a road doesn't have a speed limit, you just have to know what the speed limit is because there's a speed limit on it, it just doesn't have a sign, and depending on whether it's a residential street with streetlights or whether it's a rural road with no lines, you have to know what the speed limit is, and if they will absolutely take you down. So the one that I had on my test was a rural road, no lines, and I had to get up to 60, but, like, these are really, really small roads that, like, don't have space for 2 cars, but you have to make decent progress to get to 60 or they will mark you down. It's hard. Anyway, they also if you hesitate at a roundabout, they will mark you down, so you have like, it's all built to keep traffic flowing, it's kind of insane. Anyway, 60 miles per hour BC. So in England, they got rid of imperial units and they now use metric, except for miles. It's all miles per hour and, yeah, it doesn't make any damn sense. Anyhow, right, so at the top of the show, I promised you that I would explain why I'm, like, totally unprepared today because it was for something that's, for a good cause, and it is. For those of you who know me outside of Star Trek, I am a data analyst, and more recently, I've gotten into data visualization it's a really useful way to kind of, do what I do in data analysis and also, like, express it to to a larger audience. It's kind of halfway between design and analysis, and it sort of sits in a really fun place for me personally. I got involved with a group called Viz for Social Good, and it's basically a volunteer organization that uses volunteers, people like me who are into data visualization, using real life data sets from nonprofit organizations around the world, and then making visualizations for them for various reasons. And you can use whatever kind of you can do whatever you want with it. So you can make it super artistic, or you can make it like a presentation, or you can make a website. The key is that Viz for Social Good partners with an organization to supply a real life data set, and then you can use that. So it's kind of part of it's keeping my data skills fresh, but also you're helping out these other organizations. I've seen them in the past. They get used for either publicity materials or used in presentations, or just sometimes it just helps them clarify exactly, what their goals are. And the one we're doing this month, which ends on Sunday, is partnering with an organization in Luxembourg, which I absolutely cannot pronounce, and I'm going to mess it up. It's called Fondation Follero Luxembourg. It's all in French. I don't speak French, but they've given it to us in English as well. They don't do the work themselves. They partner with local organizations in Africa to tackle some local issues that feed into the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I've been working on that, and because it's due on Sunday, I've been tweaking that, and that's what I was doing this morning instead of watching Star Trek. But I wanted to sort of challenge you guys. Number one, if you are in any way interested in any kind of data visualization, if you happen to do that, I would please check out Viz for Social Good, because it's a good group of people and it's a fun challenge every month. But also, go and read up on the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. It's a really, really good website. It's really, really easy to understand, and they've got good information. Um, and it kind of helps highlight that, beyond the daily dramas that we have, in the especially in the United States at the moment with impeachment and the coronavirus and all that other stuff, we as a world still have an awful lot of work to do, and the UN is doing a very good job of focusing efforts and focusing and trying to focus um, people's minds on what we need to concentrate on. And there's a lot of bigger things on than just like Wall Street, for instance. So I would challenge you to please go and have a look at that website. The reason that we're all here is because we are into Star Trek, and one of the biggest ideals of Star Trek is infinite diversity and infinite combinations. The idea that eventually we will get to a post-scarcity society that is largely benevolent, but we're not going to get there unless we all actually do something about it. So. If you have any interest at all, please go and read that. Try and find a way that you can get involved and do something, even at a local level, to make the world a little bit of a better place. Anyway, so that's all for today. That's all I have. Before I go, I just want to say again, please go and check out Matthew Corey's book. If you go through dailystartreknews.com, if you go through the Amazon link there, that also helps me out because I get a little affiliate incentive for that. But that's not why that's not why I'm saying to go and read his book. Honestly, if you do nothing else but flip to the Q Me bit, it's a great script. It's wonderful. And Matthew's a friend of the show, so it'd be good to help him out too. So go do that. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys all being here and chatting, and it's always nice to see your little tiny faces. For those of you that have faces in the chat. Um, yeah, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you like what we're doing here, then please consider making a contribution on Patreon. Next month, I think I'm going to have some do another like special offer or something because I have some things to give away. So let's see what happens. Yeah, that's all I have for now. Thank you very much. Next week, it'll be whatever the second episode is of Lower Decks, and then whatever else comes up in the news. And we'll see you then. Thank you very much. Live long and prosper, guys.